Michelle Obama. She recently made some comments about a potential run for president that I found somewhat interesting. Uh, at a talk in Brooklyn as a promotion for her new book, former First Lady Michelle Obama said that the 2024 presidential race proved a point. She said that the point that was proven is that America is still not ready for a woman in the White House. Now, she said that Kamala Harris showed that she was ready to lead. She said, but the country just wasn't ready to follow. Obama said that there's still too many men who don't want to be led by women and that the nation simply has a lot of growing up to do. Now, she was talking, of course, to the great Tracy Ellis Ross, while ostensibly talking about her book, which is called The Look. That's a book about style, about power, and about her time in the White House. And she made a little joke. She said, folks should stop asking her to run because people keep saying that they want a woman president, but their actions say something else. Now, even though she supported Kamala Harris in the race, Obama has made one thing clear for years, crystal clear, in fact, that she will not run for president. She has warned voters that Donald Trump is a danger to women's rights and women's health. She has told crowds all year that a vote for Donald Trump is a vote against women. She said that Harris was qualified and ready, but that the question was whether America was mature enough for that moment. Now, Michelle Obama is without question one of the most trusted voices in the country, one of the most trusted voices, certainly in the Democratic Party. And when she talks about the United States not being ready for a woman leader, she's talking about deep, fundamental problems with power, with gender, and who we believe can run this nation. Now, Democrats are looking at the 2028 field and they're trying to figure out whether the country will finally be ready for a woman at the top or whether Michelle Obama is correct. Now, some thoughts here. Since we in night school, we gotta talk about this in I think, a nuanced and sophisticated and complicated way. Point number one: Michelle Obama is correct. America is not ready for a woman to be president. That's a fact. America is 100% not ready to accept a woman-led nation, a woman-led government, a woman-led military. We see that based on polling. We see that based on the discourse. Everywhere we look up and down, we have seen that. When we look at the 2016 race between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, we see it. When we look at the 2024 race between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, we see it. When Donald Trump goes against men, he loses. When he goes against women, he wins. And in each case, he's won somewhat handily, and more handily than predicted. In both cases, the women were more qualified. And in both cases, the women embodied the positions that Americans typically vote for. Hillary Clinton was qualified. She had been Secretary of State. She'd been a U.S. Senator. She had all the credentials, all the time, all the experience. Kamala Harris was a sitting vice president. And in both cases, they lost. And there's sufficient evidence, even in terms of the type of criticisms they got, to suggest that this was absolutely rooted, at least partially, in gender. But because you could get that analysis on CNN or MSNBC, that's whatever, duh. Let's take it a step further. Let's go deeper, though, because certainly gender has something to do with it. But let's also look at the reason why these people lost, because America also wasn't mature enough to have a black president, but they elected one, not because America turned a corner, not because America is no longer racist. America is still racist. America still believes that a white person is superior to a black person intellectually, culturally, morally, ethically, physically, etc. But America was still able to do that. So similarly, why could they not make the turn toward a woman president despite the fact that the society remains patriarchal. Well, it had to do with the candidates. At some point, the Democratic Party have to accept that they lost, not just because of the biases in the country, but because of the candidates that they ran. Hillary Clinton ran a campaign as a legacy. America was tired of legacies. They had a Clinton, a Bush, or really you could say a Bush, a Clinton, a Bush. They didn't want another Clinton. The Clintons were hated by half the country. It wasn't just that people didn't like Democrats. They didn't like Clintons. I'm talking about people who literally got out of their beds to vote against the Clintons who otherwise may not have voted. We got to be honest about that. Hillary Clinton did a terrible job campaigning in the last days. She took Florida for granted. She took Pennsylvania for granted. People on the ground were saying, you need to revisit these places and not those places. And she did not do that. Hillary Clinton did not galvanize or mobilize the working class. She did not engage or take seriously the left wing of the party. If Hillary Clinton is a man, does she win that race? Yes, absolutely. I do believe that. If she's Al Gore, does she win the race? Yes, absolutely. If she's Joe Biden, does she win that race? Yes, absolutely. But that doesn't negate the fact that the race was winnable if she'd made some different choices. Remember, she won the popular vote. Got to be honest about that. And then we get to Kamala Harris. There's no way you could look at that race and look at the landslide with which Donald Trump won, although within each state it was much closer than the media wants you to believe. There's no reason to believe that this was purely about race and gender. Now, again, race and gender absolutely mattered. Kamala Harris was the victim of a lot of things. One, a short schedule, only 107 days to run this campaign. And she was absolutely the victim of racism and sexism. When you look at the types of criticisms that were made against her, about her, you can see that. But Kamala Harris also did everything she could to alienate the left wing of her party. And I don't just mean like the hardcore, like radical left. I'm talking about even just regular progressives. Her stance on immigration, both as vice president and as a candidate, alienated folk. Fracking, alienated folk. The fact that she kept bringing it, she had Lynn Cheney. You're taking some of the most reviled figures of this young century, like Dick Cheney, and you're bringing them in as resources or assets. In other words, you're saying, look how much the right likes me. Somehow you thought moving toward the middle and moving toward the right would win you votes, and it didn't. And then most importantly, excuse me, you stood 10 toes on a genocide in Gaza. What are we talking about here? The Biden-Harris administration supported, endorsed, funded, defended, protected Israel's genocide in Gaza. And mid-genocide, she ran for president. And she had an opportunity to say that she would condition aid to Israel on human rights, on following international law. I mean, low-hanging fruit. And she did not. She could have done more. She could have said more. And if you're mad at me for saying it, Kamala Harris said it herself. Watch her interview with Angela Rye on Election Day. Read the book. She says they could have done more and said more. And I'm saying even more than she's saying. I disagree with her about the extent to which they could have done more, but we all agreed more could have been done. So when you have Muslims, when you have brown folk, when you have black folk, when you have human rights defending folk, we have all these different communities who are outraged and frustrated about her stance on guns, on fossil fuels, on immigration, on on Gaza, then it's deeply disingenuous to sit there and say, well, America just showed they didn't want a woman leading them. No, it's true. America doesn't want a woman leading. We're a deeply patriarchal country, but America could figure it out. Other countries have figured it out, but they weren't going to figure it out against the backdrop of those issues. And so when Michelle Obama says she wouldn't run because y'all ain't ready for a woman, I know she's tongue in cheek. I don't think Michelle Obama wants to be president. I don't think she's interested in running for president. I've seen no indication that she would even consider it. This interview is the first time where she's even really seriously even pretended to seriously entertain it. But if Michelle Obama were to not win for president in a race, could there be other reasons? Could it be the fact that she's never held a political office? Could it be the fact that she's demonstrated no desire to be president before? Could it be because if we're attaching her to the Obama administration, then some of the same criticisms and concerns people have about Obama, they might have about her, which would not be fair. I don't think people should be judged based on what their husbands did. I said that about Hillary. I'll say that about Michelle Obama. But at the end of the day, we need something. And I don't want to assume that somebody who doesn't vote for Michelle Obama is only doing that because she's a woman. I just don't think that that's the case. But I guarantee you that if she were to run, her being a woman and her being a black woman would be a factor. It just ain't the only factor. The reason I'm making this distinction, which may seem pedantic to some of you all, is because Democrats continue to blame everybody but themselves for their losses. They continue to blame everybody but their own weak politics and political fecklessness for these outcomes. I'm not saying it's a dump on Michelle Obama. I love Michelle Obama as a human being. I love Michelle Obama as a personality. I love Michelle Obama as a first lady. I love the Obamas for who they are outside of the office. I think they're amazing. But when you step into that White House, the Obamas are no different than the Clintons, no different than the Bushes, no different than the Trumps, no different. They're running an empire. I'm not saying that there's no difference in terms of their political ideologies. Relax, y'all. I'm saying these are all managers of empire. And we got to be honest about that.